From Deloitte Tax, welcome to the Tax News and Views podcast. In this series, we talk to specialists from Deloitte about the latest business issues and developments. I'm Carrie Falkenhayn, your host for Tax News and Views. And today we are recording a special edition tax policy update where we will recap some of the events of 2023, but more importantly, look forward to what might occur in 2024. Joining me today are two familiar guests, John Traub and Anna Taylor from Deloitte's Tax Policy Group. Welcome, John and Anna. Good to talk to you guys again. And Anna, so as we approach the end of 2023, we have a speaker. We have a government that's still open, but we still don't have a tax bill despite strong bipartisan support. What do you make of that?
Well, 2023 has been defined as basically doing the bare minimum and really not much beyond that. Preventing a debt default this summer seems to have been necessary. So far, members in both parties are agreeing that keeping the government open is also an absolute necessity. And passage of an annual defense policy bill is on their necessary list as it cleared Congress right before the House adjourned for a long holiday break at the end of last week. But really, very little that wasn't absolutely necessary is getting through Congress this year.
What I think makes some people frustrated is that there seems to be genuine bipartisan interest in an end of the year tax bill, especially like dealing with certain expired TCJA pieces, whether or not that be 163J or Section 174 or something on bonus depreciation. But I think there's been some interest around the child tax credit as well. So even despite all this, it wasn't enough to get it done. So John, why not?
Well, we've seen both parties engage in a bizarre game in recent years or recent months of, I want this, but I think you want it more than I do. So I'll give you what you want if I get something else I want too. So we're seeing it, for example, on funding for Ukraine and Israel, which many Republicans in the Senate want. But they're saying to Democrats, we think you want it more. So we want you to add something in us on border security that we really want. And we're seeing it in tax policy where Republicans are saying, we want to do 174, 163J bonus, and Democrats will give you child tax credit that you want, and Democrats also want 174, but they want something else as well, in that case, the child tax credit. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic we see both parties playing in. But two real problems here. One is there's no real vehicle right now to attach a bill like this to. We think there's strong bipartisan support for that 174, 163J bonus depreciation package, along with child tax credit. But it's not the kind of bill that would ride on its own. It would normally need to be attached to something else, and the something else is usually government funding. But that's been extended through the early January, so really there's nothing imminent Congress was dealing with at the end of December that was going to be a vehicle to which this could be attached. There's also a question about whether or not this should be paid for, and this has real implications in the short term and the long term. In the short term, it'd be hard to come up with a way to offset the cost of a roughly $100 billion package, sort of evenly divided between business stuff and individual stuff. But it'd be really hard if you think forward 24 months to what happens when key pieces of TCJA expire. There's no universe in which anybody could plausibly identify $3.5 trillion of offsets to extend TCJA. So some of the thoughts around what to do with this package now have big long-term ramifications going forward.
So is this the final straw? I mean, are we going to be stuck with these TCJA provisions forever?
I don't think so. But of course, we've been saying that for a long time now. But there are a number of must-pass bills next year to which we think tax writers are eyeing the possible inclusion of this deal that didn't get done this year. So obviously we have two government funding deadlines. One occurs on January 19th. One occurs on February 2nd. The FAA, we think, is going to be extended out through March 8th. There's a deadline in April to deal with foreign surveillance issues. And then many members view funding for Ukraine and Israel as a must-pass bill, although some people are strongly opposed to it as well. Those are all possible vehicles that we think folks will target as possible places to put a child tax credit TCJA bill. And I think they will find a path forward on them. And I know Democrats are eager to do it quickly because they'd like the child tax credit enhancements to show up in people's 2024 paychecks or their returns. And so they want to get it into the tax code before the 2024 filing season starts. So one thing we will watch carefully, though, is is as this process has gone along, there's generally been an assumption that these provisions would be made retroactive back to January 1st of 2022 when 174 and 163J took effect in their current forms. And I think that's still where the members of Congress want to be, at least the members of the tax writing committees. But other members may be skeptical of the incentives created by making a provision retroactive more than 2 full calendar years out. So we're going to watch that space very carefully. There's certainly some risk that these are not done seamlessly back to January 1 of 22.
Okay, let me change the topic somewhat and move on to the Moore case, right? That's the case that the Supreme Court heard a couple weeks ago. John, any thoughts on that and where that might take us?
Yeah, if you're looking for the sort of potential so-called black swan event that has the potential to really disrupt Congress, it would be a broad sweeping decision in the Moore case that imposes into the 16th Amendment a realization requirement. Like many people, I listened to the oral arguments 2 weeks ago, and the justices seemed skeptical of the idea of imposing a realization requirement and seemed cognizant of the number of places in the tax code that would really disrupt the IRS and how the tax code is drafted. Having said that, I think we also know it's a fool's errand to think you can read the tea leaves of a Supreme Court oral argument and know how they're going to decide. So we will keep a wary eye on the Supreme Court's decision docket because a broad outcome here could have a major disruptive impact on the tax agenda next year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Anne, I'm going to turn to you. So we're recording this near the end of 2023. And like many years, I guess there's the prospect that some of our holidays might be interrupted by some last minute regulatory actions. So what are some of those that we should be on the lookout before the ball drops in Times Square this year?
Well, you can never be sure, but we have heard that a number of reg packages could be near the finish line and could come out before the end of the year. So I'd keep my eye out for at least a few of those. Now, in the energy space, they're furiously working on some clean energy credit regs. Specifically, I think we could expect to see more on the sustainable aviation fuel credit before the end of the year, maybe something on clean hydrogen credit. I know end of last week there was some activity in the advanced manufacturing production credit space. In addition to those energy credits that they're working on, you could see something on the book minimum tax and the treatment of partnership shares, the stock buyback excise tax, procedural guidance around Section 174, and really who knows what else. I do expect there'll be a flurry of end-of-year activity, and so people focused on Treasury notices could be busy between the holidays here at the end of the year.
Anna, what else is on your list for things that could happen in 2024, things to pay attention to?
Well, there's been a lot of work in the committees on the Taiwan double tax deal, which is really it's a tax treaty with Taiwan by another name. I think there's a lot of interest in seeing that get over the finish line early in the next year. Maybe there could be some sort of reaction to a retroactive GST from Canada. The FAA bill is going to have to be reauthorized again in the spring, a Farm Bill reauthorization. And then, of course, there will continue to be a lot of regulatory activity, especially on the new book minimum tax and the clean energy credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. But beyond that, I think behind the scenes, you're going to see the tax writing committee really focused on getting ready for the granddaddy of all fiscal cliffs at the end of 2025, when key pieces of TCJA are set to expire and OECD Pillar 2 goes from theoretical to, reality and implementation starts to hit. So all parties on Capitol Hill are thinking about how they want to position themselves for that debate. And really, so much is going to depend on who wins the House, the Senate, and the White House next November.
Well, I won't ask either of you to speculate on that at this point, but you've certainly given us a lot to think about as we head into 2024. So thank you both for sharing those insights with us. And I know we will be talking again in the new year. But in the meantime, if people would like more information, you can subscribe to the email version of Tax News and Views. Just go to Deloitte.com and search on Tax News and Views. You can always connect with John or Anna directly via LinkedIn. And I hope you'll continue to tune in here for future policy editions. In the meantime, thank you all so much for listening in. I hope you all have wonderful holidays and continue to be well in the new year. Take care.